Welcome to the Charity Changemakers podcast, the show where we dive into the journeys, challenges and successes of the leaders shaping the sector today. Each episode I'll be sitting down with the senior charity leaders to hear their stories, uncover their insights and explore what it really takes to drive change today. And if you enjoy the podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe, like and share to help us reach as many people as possible and showcase the incredible charities that are coming on the show. So whether you're a charity professional, a trustee, thinking about joining the sector or making that next step in your career, or just passionate about making an impact, then this podcast is for you. Let's get started. I'm absolutely delighted to have Greg Allen, who's the Chief Executive of Devon Air Ambulance, on the show today. And Greg would describe his career as a bit of a squiggly line, similar to the episode that we shared with Mary last week, a couple of weeks ago. Greg described his career sort of being in three different sections, from sort of finance and military at the early part of his career to then 10 years within the NHS and then 10 years now within the charity sector in a variety of paid for and trustee roles. I think one of the things that you'll take away from this conversation is about that transition into wanting to work within a values-driven organisation. And first of all, finding that fulfilment within the NHS, and then even further in that move into the charity sector to what feels like a really natural fit, as Greg speaks, of working and living within Devon and making a difference in his local community where he's been for over 20 years. There's lots of great takeaways in this conversation, as well as opportunity. Greg talks about some of the work that he's involved in with the University of Exeter. Lots to take away. I'm sure you're really going to enjoy the show. So look, that's enough from me. Let's get on and meet our Changemaker. Absolutely delighted, Greg, that you've been able to join us today on the Charity Changemakers podcast. Thanks for being here.
Adam, it's great to see you. Thanks for opening us up with a good chat today. Yeah,
absolutely. No, really looking forward to it. I really like these conversations because actually, Greg and I, we literally have never met before until today. So as we navigate through this conversation, it is really going to be me hearing it for the first time, like the listener, and hopefully asking some helpful and insightful questions as we move through the conversation. So really grateful for you coming on in this sense. And I mean, we do preset some questions because we've got some quickfire questions which we'll run through in a moment, but because I can never do them justice, Greg, just take a minute or so to give us an introduction as to who you are and what you do.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, well, my career has been pretty interesting, really. Never really followed a straight path, but it's been around 34 years, I think, so far. Currently, I'm the Chief Executive of Devon Air Ambulance down in the Southwest. This is my fifth Chief Exec role, I think. Yeah, fifth Chief Exec role. And I also have a post as a Professor of Practice at Exeter University Business School as well, which we can talk about. Some of the other things I've been involved in over the years, certainly in recent times, are charity trustee roles on boards of charities such as Arthritis Action, Hospice Care, Shaw Trust as well, some national charities and regional ones as well. And I've lived in Devon for 20 years here. I've worked all over the country during my career. But really done that from Devon as a base. And I suppose it's been 3 different decades really, which we can talk about. One in commercial and the military, one in the NHS, and then into charities across many sectors.
Yeah, perfect, great. Well, it sounds like there's going to be lots to try and get through in a short space of time. But I'm sure we'll give it a good go. And as I said, we've got these quickfire questions. Bit of an opportunity, obviously, for the guests to get to know you, the listeners to get to know you a little bit. And they've set these questions for this season, which has been great, and I think they've been enjoyed throughout all the episodes that we've done so far. And that first question is, what are you reading or listening to at the moment?
Well, I think there's a couple of hobbies I've got, which are really cycling and endurance cycling and the French language. And I think those sort of link to things that I do on the reading and listening front. So I'm into anything French on podcasts. I actually digest a lot of my news in French because I find that quite helpful from a different perspective to hear the news about the UK and other places from a different contextual perspective. And there's a guy called Hugo Decrypt who does these bite-sized pieces of news in French, which are very useful. And on the back of that, I've been reading a book called Éloge de la lenteur, which is in praise of the slowness, which links to my sort of way of working at the moment, in that I think I've been driven over the years so much by pace and achievement, but actually just taking things in a more steady pace is at the front of my mind now. And there's another book I've been reading again, actually, by a professor of happiness called Arthur C. Brooks from Harvard. It's called From Strength to Strength. And it talks about moving from that sort of striver's part of your career, I suppose, into more use of the crystallized intelligence, the accumulated wisdom that you've gained over that time and how you apply that.
Yeah, brilliant. Professor of happiness. I mean, that's a great job title.
That's a role and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, indeed. Yeah.
It's interesting what he talks about, because he talks about people spending so much of their career, as I say, striving and pushing themselves up the corporate ladder or through other career paths, and then there is a point in people's lives, not a particular age, where that crystallized intelligence they've gained can be put to use as people still working as senior leaders, chief execs, directors, and in other roles, imparting that knowledge and using more of a coaching approach with their teams. And I think that's something that I do more of now than I did in my early career as a chief exec.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, we definitely need to come back and cover some of that in the conversation that we have together. The second quickfire question. I've really grown to love this question. I think actually with all the variety of different answers that we've had through the last few episodes. But yeah, what is a quality that you had as a child which you still have today as an adult?
I think there's two. Quickfire. The first is curiosity and interest in people. I was always the child, I think, who asked the stupid question, and at times I thought that was a bad thing. I've grown and come to learn that actually there are probably no stupid questions, particularly in business, in my view. And the other one is about discipline. When I was a child, we moved as a family to Egypt. I spent my childhood in southern Cairo, and I'd never really been a swimmer because it was always too cold in the UK for me to jump in the pool.
Sure. And
then I went to this American school there and found myself in an environment with an open air pool in the heat, and that started my whole sort of love of sport, all things physical, and that discipline of doing things day by day by day and making small gains in terms of improvement.
Yes, yeah, brilliant. No, that's really helpful. And Greg, if you get a completely free day, not sure how often they come around for you, but if you do get one, how are you spending it?
Do you know, within my family, my wife and children often say that I find it difficult to relax. I can relax, but I do it in an active way. I think it comes from my late dad's work ethic and my mum's energy. But basically, I always start the day with a coffee to get me going and some kind of physical activity. I also tend to get onto WhatsApp quite quickly because my daughter lives in South Korea currently. So there's a message usually as she's finishing her working day. But in terms of my activities, either something physical like a great cycle ride over Dartmoor or across East Devon with my group of cycling friends, or a walk with the family, and also possibly some online French speaking. I'm involved in an online community of French speakers. So, something like that, I think.
Yes, yeah, perfect. No, that's great. Well, lovely. Thank you for that insight. Lovely to get to know you a little bit better through the start of the podcast. We always start then off with this first question, which always feels like a big one, and I guess one that you could probably spend hours talking about. But it's always interesting as to how people started in the charity sector, how this journey began for you. Obviously, we want to talk about that career progression and how you got to where you are now. But it's always interesting to hear how that first opportunity or that first chance in the charity sector came about.
Yeah, I'd spent about 10 years in the NHS before becoming a chief exec, and we can go back and talk about that shortly. But I think the first opportunity I had as a chief exec was one of those moments sometimes where you get a call, an opportunity comes up, and it wasn't actually a charity. It was a government body that sat within ultimately a FTSE 250 PLC, and I ran that for a few years. And a lot of the work we were doing in that particular organisation was working with representative bodies of medical and clinical sides of the NHS and the wider health system. And having spent 10 years in the health system in the NHS as a director, I started getting more and more interested in what we called then the third sector and charities, etc. And I just loved the idea of that tangible social impact and working and leading with multiple partners and organisations to do good. And a really super opportunity came up in London with an organisation, a small organisation called Future Care Capital, which had been around actually for many years, from about 1945. The Queen was its royal patron at the time. And it really needed to be taken to the next level as an organisation. That was pre-COVID, and I jumped into that organisation and off I went. The start of my charity chief exec journey.
Yeah. But 10 years before that within the NHS is, and I think you talked about a military career before that as well. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So if we go back, these three blocks, if you like, of my career, often when I think about young people now and folk coming through, looking at becoming a director or a chief exec, I think in this day and age, more and more people have non-linear career paths. And certainly that's the experience I've had in my career. So it resonates with me. I understand some of the challenges around that and the opportunities. And in the first 10 years of my working life, I left university wanting to be a wealthy investment banker, frankly. And after a while, I realized that although I'd spent some time in financial services and then about 5 years as a private banker at Coutts & Co., it really wasn't the environment for me in the best sense. I wanted to work more closely with people on the ground in communities in terms of social impact, a more public sector focus. But there was this period in between my first job in financial services and Coutts & Co., where I went, got a place at Sandhurst and was commissioned as an army officer and spent some years there, building up the early part of my professional career as an HR director. And as I said, I then spent 10 years in pretty much every kind of organisation in the NHS, funnily enough. It was a programme bringing people in from the private sector to drive and instigate change and impact within the NHS. And that's the opportunity I took.
Yeah. But it's interesting you talk about there was a value in there, I guess, from very early stage coming out of university and not getting that fulfillment, which sounds like from financial services, that there was, you wanted to give back, give value, local community, or, through the difference that you're making through work.
Yeah, and I think, with financial services, there's a lot I took away from that in terms of skills and experience that's really relevant to working in the public and the charity sector. First of all, I worked extensively with clients, client-facing roles, working with people, influencing, advocating, helping them see a way through different challenging problems, albeit in terms of perhaps a narrow focus on money and investment. And I think guiding people as well and developing the courage and strength to say the thing professionally that you needed to say to someone to help them improve their situation. And I think within the charity sector and the NHS, as a director and in the last decade as a chief exec, those have been really important skills to deploy in these roles.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting on the last episode actually of the podcast with the guest Mary. We were talking about squiggly line careers actually, and about actually she'd never, for her personally, there was never this aspiration as a director of HR, never this aspiration that I was going to be a director of HR within the charity sector. And I guess potentially in a similar way to you that there's not this start point saying I want to become a chief executive in the charity world, and it's kind of there's been organic and opportunities along the way.
Definitely. I relate to that squiggly career path for sure. I think I always wanted to lead. When I was at school and university, I played a lot of sports. I was in the cadet force at school. I really enjoyed leading. I enjoyed the challenge and the buzz, actually, of leading teams. And especially if you got, by your peers selected to lead the team. That was an amazing thing. But I think I've developed over the years in phases. My approach, reflecting on how this career path has gone, has been to focus on skills development and how I learn from the things that go wrong quite often, particularly in that post I've got with the university, talking through with students how the learning from that can help you. And there were definitely times when I looked at chief executives from the perspective of me being a director, and I thought, there's no way I want to do that job.
Yeah.
It's just too much. The buck stops there completely. But it came to a point where I thought I absolutely want to do that, and here we are.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And I'm always interested for people that have made that transition from other sectors, and with finance services, military, NHS. Actually, a big piece of organisations that we're talking about that I guess that you've been involved in. How did you find that transition into the first role that you had within the charity sector, and like you say, taking those skills and experiences and transferring them across into a new context, and I guess within a smaller organisation?
Yeah, I think that first 10 years I was transitioning between lots of different roles, and I really was beginning to think, what am I doing here? But that became the foundation of being able to deal with uncertainty and change, sometimes driven by myself, sometimes by others. I think the transition from private banking into the NHS was one of the biggest transitions I made. It was a conscious decision to move into, in my view, a more values-based environment. And actually an environment in the NHS that was a lot of very clever, well-trained people I was working with. It was very challenging, excellent environment. But then moving into the charity sector, I'd had that 10 years of working in health and care, and I moved into the health and care world of charities. So that sort of sector piece around health and care was not a shock or a challenge necessarily. In fact, it was relatively seamless. But the difference, I think, with charities is that, for example, with Devon Air Ambulance, like other charities, we're here not because we're funded centrally by the government or the NHS. We're here because we are funded by people who donate generously to us. So there's no money flow coming in from the top being poured in. And that is something that is actually extremely commercial, in my view. Charities, where I've been the chief exec, it's as challenging and exciting as running a commercial organisation, which I've done, where you need to go and find the money.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I'd be interested to know, as you've made this transition into the charity sector, and clearly, great experiences from previous sectors, things that you think have helped you develop in your career through the charity sector. Whether qualifications or learning or mentors or are there things that have come alongside that have been of great support and helped you to make that, I guess, leap up the career ladder within the charity world?
Definitely. And I think anyone who's looking at a career in the charity sector, or to be honest, any sector, but certainly if you have aspirations to be a leader, I would start building your networks as soon as possible. I've got people who became part of my networks 30 years ago who have popped up, maybe deliberately or not, at times in my career later on, and certainly in the charity sector as a chief exec, who've been really helpful, and I've helped them. And I think there is something about networks and this idea of reaching out and giving yourself and developing relationships, because you need those, particularly as a chief exec. It can be a lonely place, and peer-to-peer support, challenge, having those networks is a really valuable part of having the things around you that enable you to do the job. Because I think whatever sector you're in fact, if you've been a chief executive, you know the challenges that people have in those roles. And I challenge anyone to say that they've been a chief exec and it was all plain sailing and they didn't need to turn to someone now and then for support. In terms of qualifications, that's interesting because probably up until the end of my time in the health service, so this is going back 10 plus years now, I seem to be obsessed with qualifications. I needed certain things like a master's on top of my first degree to become a director in the NHS. I've not been so focused on formal qualifications since then. It's more about that personal and professional development in the job. There've been some really good input coaching-wise I've had, and mentoring. And now I'm a coach and mentor as well. And giving back in that sense is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, very interesting. You mentioned a few trustee roles as well that you've held. Have they just been within sort of this last 10-year period as well, or did you have previous trustee experience before moving in?
They have. I have done some other roles in the past. Way back when I was in the army as well. But I think in the last 10 years, those trustee roles have been during that period. So I was with Arthritis Action, that small national charity, for I think five or so years, and hospice care in Exeter for about the same amount of time. Both of those pretty much through COVID as well. Hospice care in particular,
Yes, right.
that sector, rather like the sector I'm in with air ambulances now, and the challenges that charities face during that period. Shore Trust, this is an interesting point about leadership, I think. So I was appointed to the board of Shore Trust as a trustee and spent a year there. And the board there is just absolutely incredible, big national charity. But I had to make a decision to step off that board, because I just felt, when I took on the chief exec role at Devon Air Ambulance, and also alongside the post at the university, it was just too much in terms of time. And I learned a lot from the way that the chair handled that. Very experienced chair. It was a conversation. Yes, yeah. We both came to the same conclusion, that actually you've just got to be realistic sometimes. So it's disappointing to leave. Yeah. Maybe, doors still open one day. But that's a good example, I think, of changing patterns of looking at roles and how long you should be there in some circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely, and important not to stretch yourself too far, that you become ineffective in all the different places that you are on the work that you're doing. I guess I'm always interested as to the value. I mean, clearly, people will look at trustee roles and obviously volunteering their time and the value that you can give back to the organisations. But I also think there's value for the organisations that you're employed by that are sending you out into these types of trustee roles in some senses, and the value that you gain and the things that you learn that are helpful for the organisations that you're working within. I think sometimes we trustee roles as a give, but actually when you can step back and take that time to reflect on them, they're also the opportunity to learn and to grow within the organisations that you're a part of, and that career journey.
That is such a good point, because I've found in the various chief exec roles I've done that quite a lot of the guidance and coaching and mentoring I've done where I've needed to, of other executives working with me and for me, has been around that understanding, or sometimes lack of understanding, of what the role of a trustee is. We do some work on this. My current chair at Devon Air Ambulance, I'm part of a programme at Exeter University each year, professional pathways programme for charities and for students to get a sense of what it's like to be a trustee or an exec. And I think if you can see things from the perspective of a trustee whilst you're an executive, chief exec in a charity, that helps you understand a lot more why they're there, why they ask the questions. They're not there to constantly mark your homework. They're there to have the discussion with you, to seek assurance, and to work with you for the greater good, for social impact.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And you talked at the start of the conversation a little bit about how, I guess, the evolution of your leadership style, and I guess honed over, talk about these three decades and three chunks of sort of these career chunks. If you were to reflect on your leadership style now and what that looks like and how that's developed, how would you describe it?
It's definitely developed, for sure. I think in those early years as a director, and certainly as a chief executive, perhaps I was a little bit more directive, leaning into the power of the role. Yeah, I think leaning into the role with that sense of authority maybe was a part of those early experiences as a senior leader. And you need that. You need different styles, don't you? But I think as I've developed and continue to develop as a chief executive, you certainly need to be much more focused in on your listening. And I think the culture of organizations that you lead, that emotional intelligence to sense that gut feel, how things are going around you, and ask those questions that you need to ask, rather than just speaking with whatever wisdom you have gained over the years. And that's why I think having those skills as a curious child, as a trustee, asking the questions, has helped me to develop more of a coaching style alongside the other leadership styles that I have there. There's another thing I would also say is that we often talk in interview processes in an organisation about what are your three greatest weaknesses and how are you going to demonstrate that you'll improve those, for example. And I'm not a fan of that, really. I'm a fan of focusing on strengths. We all have natural strengths that we default to, and some areas we're not so strong at. But I'm into developing people where they have real strengths and the potential to develop those. That's my thing, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really, really important, important area. It's one of my pet hates is that interview question. Tell me about a weakness. I think I ruffled some feathers on LinkedIn a few weeks ago with a post. A post about that. But yeah, absolutely, you want to focus on the strengths, the qualities, where people have learned from. Where maybe they've received some challenging feedback and what they've learned from it in a work context and move that on. But yeah, that's definitely how you to try and develop individuals. So how's it gone in year one? Then I guess in from joining Devon Air Ambulance, so tell us a little bit about how that opportunity came about, or how it came across your desk, and what it's looking like. Less than a year into the role.
Well, I've still got a smile on my face, a beaming smile, I think, from having been appointed to this. I've loved the work I've done in other organisations. I mean, obviously, at times there are some really difficult moments, aren't there? And certainly as a chief exec. I think the mission and vision of Devon Air Ambulance as an organisation is just so close to my heart. I've got 3 friends, 2 cyclists and an equestrian here, who had their lives saved by this air ambulance service. And they're still alive now because of that. And that is a really important driver for me. It's something that connects me directly with the purpose. We have the most inspirational founder here, an incredible woman called Anne Raleigh, who established this charity with immense inner strength about 30 years ago after a tragic accident which resulted in the death of one of her teenage children. And I think it's that drives me here. That purpose makes this job really special, and not least because I am part of the community. This isn't my charity. It's our charity in this community. And of course, Devon's a place where we have so many visitors throughout the year, tourists and others. And so actually it's there for anyone who's here, where it's relevant for us to be out assisting. There are other charities I've led that have been very different to this. Future Care Capital I mentioned, Point of Care Foundation was another small charity. I spent some time as an interim chief exec there, that were quite, in some respects, they were quite policy driven as advocates and influencers. But Blind Veterans UK was one of those other charities I ran for a period of time. And that was another charity with that sort of frontline service purpose. And as a military veteran myself, that was close to my heart. But Devon Air Ambulance, there's just something about this organisation that is incredible.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And talk to us a little bit about, always interested when it's a regional charity, and particularly, I guess, in one where, a bit more of a remote location. Talk to us a little bit about what, size of the organisation, what that looks like, ways of working. Is that, I recognise you've only been there in the last year, but has that changed off the back of COVID, or are you still quite office-based or remote? Yeah, just talk to us a little bit about the organisation, what that looks like.
Yeah, well, it'd be difficult to talk just a little bit, to be honest, because there's so much going on here. But I'll try and be brief, and we can open it up. I describe this as a complex organisation. Recently, I was out with a friend who referred to it as a small charity. It's not a small charity. I mean, it's not a small charity per se, but it's a very complex charity. We've got 170 or so staff in this organisation. We've got 600 plus volunteers. We need in the region of 10 to 15 million pounds a year to run this charity. We are not part of the NHS. We're 100% funded by the public and other donors. And the complexities here are numerous. So Devon, unlike some other counties, is enormous. We've got 2,500 square kilometres with a big lump of granite, which is Dartmoor in the middle. So the geography, the distance, the propensity for us to be called out. 80% of our roads are unclassified, for example, very difficult for the drivers. And we've got 20 or so retail shops. We've got our pilots, critical care paramedics, aircraft engineers, because we have our own aircraft operating certificate here. We basically own our helicopters. So all of those things together, plus the support services to raise the funds that we need and run the organisation, it's quite a complex operation.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And what does that fundraising income then look like? Is that a whole range of different sort of income streams? I mean, you mentioned retail as well, but it's sort of traditional fundraising income streams that you're reliant upon?
So from a variety of sources. Obviously, we've got the fundraising income from numerous events that we run every year. We're currently in the middle of the events season. So, recently we had what we called a heli hike. Hundreds of people hiking across the edge of Dartmoor, raising money over sort of 26 miles or so, and other distances. We've got bungee jumps and regular things like that, an inflatable 5K event last weekend. So there's lots of things that go on in that respect in terms of events at county shows. But throughout the year, we're raising money. Throughout the year, we're doing many things to engage with the public to do that. And of course, another big part of our funding is through gifts in wills. We've received some very generous gifts in wills. It's quite incredible how, even over time, some situations we've been called out to, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years later, something linked to that situation has resulted in someone giving us a gift in their will. And that's a big part of what we do. So those are some examples. But I think in terms of the future, the fundraising environment is really tough for charities right now, and with the cost of living crisis at this particular time, and people's ability to give time as volunteers, for example, there's a real stretch for charities, I think. And at the same time, we are trying to bring together our various key elements of our service into one place in our airbase, a new airbase, so that we can engage better with the public and have a much better environment to help them get more involved in our work, as well as have the facilities we need in a sort of digitally driven, future-focused world. Yeah,
absolutely. And do you have challenges around recruitment and attracting people to the organisation, or getting the skills and experiences that you require? Again, just thinking on that regional, in comparison to being a London-based organisation where there's greater set of people, more people. I don't mean greater as in they're greater people, but there's more of them. There's more people in that area geographically. Is it a tough environment to attract people to the organisation, or is it because of the reputation of the organisation? Attracting people is perhaps sometimes easier.
It's mixed, because as someone who moved lock, stock, and barrel, my family down here 20 years ago, I think it's a really big decision for someone and a family, maybe anyone, to move from, say, London or any other place to a county like Devon at the other side of the country. So you're always going to have that balance of people who would just think that's absolutely what I want to do, or I'd love to do it, but it's just a pipe dream. I think in terms of many of the roles we have in our organisation, the local demand, the ways of working that have changed now, people being able to work a little bit more virtually. You asked that question about office-based earlier on. We work a lot more flexibly than pre-COVID in terms of location, certainly for support staff. And I think the pool of talent and the pool of applicants is strong in the local economy. We're a great organisation to work for, and people love us. I mean, the messages I get on a regular basis about the support people have for this organisation, they just love it, which gives you a really warm feeling when you're in it. That said, I think for certain skills, such as pilots, there are over 20 air ambulances across the country, independent charities, for example, and there is generally a challenge around pilot recruitment. So this is where we have to work closely with other charities in this sector. And we want to. I've got a great relationship that I'm developing with the chief execs of those other charities, and also Air Ambulance UK, the overarching national body, which looks at some of the ebb and flow of some of these recruitment areas and issues as they arise.
Yeah. And if someone's listening and hearing for the first time about Devon Air Ambulance and the work that you do, where can they come find out more information? And I guess also, people that are listening that are thinking about ways in which they might be able to support. What ways can people get involved in the organisation?
Well, our website, dat.org, daat.org, is the first port of call. And I would hope that everyone will find that very easy to engage with. We've been going through what many organisations have been going through in recent times, a full digital transformation here, as they call it. And we have been working really hard to improve access to our services, the understanding, in terms of an understanding of what we do, why we're here, how you can donate, how you can get involved, how you can volunteer. Yeah. So there's lots of information on there if anyone's interested. And I think generally we're very visible in this area. So I mentioned those retail shops. We've got over 20 of them. I was in 2 of them yesterday. You can just pop into those shops. There's some great things to buy, even if you just want to visit when you're on a trip down to Devon or if you're a resident in Devon. And our staff are so welcoming. The volunteers we've got are super. We had a volunteers away day a month or so ago with a couple of hundred of them coming together with me and the senior team and other members of the paid staff, encouraging more voluntary work with the charity, particularly with younger people as well. And we're finding more and more younger people are very interested in working with us, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've not even talked about the work that you're doing with the university. I think we should also touch on that as well. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes, I think this is something that's grown over time. When I was running other organisations some years ago, I was approached to get involved in some talks with Exeter University, and I accepted willingly. I'm always happy to go and talk to groups of people about experiences I've had in the working world. But that grew and developed, and an opportunity came up in the first instance around an executive education programme where the business school at Exeter University was looking to appoint a professor of practice. And what these are roles where you have somebody with extensive business experience who can bring that real world perspective into the academic environment and work alongside the pure academic researchers, amazing people doing incredible work, who need that perspective from those who are out there and have been out there for many years, getting a few scars and stripes of the things that happen when you're running organizations. So that's what I ended up doing. My focus is on leadership, but it's quite broad. Yeah. You can look up the profile if you Google me at Exeter University and see what I'm involved in. But essentially, it's supporting any work where we are promoting responsible leadership, and I suppose this sort of future-focused digital side of leadership in a changing context environmentally for organisations.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And the work and the people and the organisations that you're working with there, you think that's still directly sort of moulding and evolving your leadership and the way that you I guess, go to work day in, day out?
Completely, yes. I mean, it's interesting on the one hand, being in an environment where you are the boss, you're the chief executive. I mean, I don't walk around thinking myself as the boss, but I am that person who has that position, I suppose. And then you walk into the university environment, and I'm one of the people in the team who is, supporting others who are doing this great work in the same way that I'm supporting my team as a chief executive in the Air Ambulance Trust. But I think the perspective you get in an academic environment of working with others from different sectors and challenging each other, and honestly, I say working with young people, I mean, increasingly with degree apprenticeships, there's so many people from different walks of life and ages coming through the study route like that. And I just think it's fascinating to be able to impart whatever you can to help them contract the time it takes to learn the things it took me, say, 30 years to learn into a much shorter time period to help them.
Yeah. Which I suppose leads nicely into the question, Greg. If you could go back to your younger self, the person at the start of your career, I guess coming out of university, and give yourself one piece of advice or a message, what do you think that would be?
Well, from a personal perspective, I'd probably say discover cycling earlier, because then you'll save your knees. I played too much rugby for too long. But professionally, I think what I've learned is that everything is a lesson to help you become the person you're supposed to be, I suppose, and to continue developing and learning as I am. So at times when I've thought something happened because, I did something wrong, or I didn't develop a relationship or a connection with someone the way I could have done, actually there's so many factors at play. And you need to just try and step back and get perspective, realize that these things come along to test you and help develop you. So keep developing those skills. If you find at times that you might feel like you're losing your voice, not your actual voice, but that voice you felt you had, and suddenly you've got nothing to say or don't feel you can say something, you'll find it again. And you'll find it with more authenticity, I think, if you embrace the lessons that come along.
Brilliant. Oh, great. Well, no, that's really helpful to hear. And look, really enjoyed our conversation. It's been so insightful and really, really helpful. We'll make sure that we obviously tag yourself and the Devon Air Ambulance in the post, and make sure that the links through to the website are in all of the show notes, so people can get through to find out more and to read more and find ways in which they can get involved with the organisation as well. It always feels like we should, and particularly when people are early in their tenure as well in a new organisation, I always say, it'd be great to get you back on in a couple of years' time and hear how things are going and how they're advancing. But again, huge thanks for coming on today and to sharing with us.
Adam, I'd be very happy to come back again. Thanks for having me. Great to speak to you.
Yeah, brilliant, lovely. Thanks, Greg. We'll speak again soon.
Thanks, Adam.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Charity Changemakers podcast. I hope you've been inspired by the incredible work being done across the charity sector. And this episode is proudly brought to you by my business, Charisma Charity Recruitment. We are passionate about delivering top-tier recruitment services to the charity sector that we care so much about. If your organisation is looking for expert support, then we'd love to help. Please do get in touch today. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, please leave a review, and don't forget to subscribe, like and share, because it helps us reach more people and showcase the amazing charities that come on the show. And for more episodes, please visit our website, charismarecruitment.co.uk. So until next time, keep change making.